Stop scrolling, because if a woman has ever felt drawn to you and you completely missed it, what you're about to hear might hit hard. But it will also change how you move from this point forward. Most men don't lose women because they lack looks, status, or confidence. They lose them because they fail to recognize the moment when interest is already there. And once that moment passes, it rarely returns in the same way. In this breakdown, I'm going to show you 3 clear signals that reveal when a woman's attraction has already started. But don't skip ahead. The third one is the most dangerous to miss. It doesn't happen in private. It happens in plain sight, surrounded by people. And yet most men overlook it completely until it's too late. And once you understand it, you won't be able to ignore it again. What usually holds men back isn't attractiveness, it's awareness. Nobody really teaches the subtle language behind female attraction. And that language doesn't operate the same way as male desire. When a man feels attraction, it tends to be immediate and direct. He knows what he wants and he often expresses it openly. But female attraction works differently. It unfolds gradually. It tests. It observes. It creates openings instead of rushing through them. She doesn't always move forward first. She sets the stage and watches to see if you can step into it naturally. This isn't manipulation or strategy. It's deeply rooted instinct. For centuries, selection carried consequences, so signals evolved to be subtle rather than obvious. That instinct still exists today. So when attraction appears, it rarely announces itself loudly. It shows up in quiet, almost invisible behaviors. And that's exactly what these 3 signs are. Before we continue, if you find this kind of breakdown helpful in understanding real human behavior without fake lines or gimmicks, engage with this content, support it, and stay connected so more insights like this reach you. Now let's begin. Sign 1, she touches you without needing to. This is usually the first signal and also the one most men misunderstand. They assume it's just friendliness, but friendliness has structure. Attraction bends that structure. When a woman is drawn to you, she will find small, unnecessary reasons to make physical contact. Not because she has to, but because proximity feels natural to her in that moment. It might be a light touch on your arm during conversation, a brief adjustment of something on your clothing, or a casual brush as she passes by. What matters isn't just the touch, it's the duration. A neutral interaction ends quickly, but when there's attraction, the contact tends to linger just slightly longer than expected. That extra second changes everything. It signals that her body is responding before her thoughts fully catch up. From a psychological standpoint, attraction activates a desire for sensory confirmation. Touch becomes a quiet way of testing connection without saying anything out loud. If she touches you and doesn't immediately withdraw, that moment carries meaning. It's not random, it's a soft invitation, and your reaction matters more than you think. Calm presence, not overreaction, tells her everything she needs to know. Now let's go deeper. Sign 2, her eyes start behaving differently. People often say eye contact is important, but they rarely understand what actually changes when attraction begins. It's not just about looking, it's about the rhythm of looking. When she's drawn to you, her gaze will hold a fraction longer than normal. Then she breaks it, not to the side, but downward. And then, almost instinctively, she looks back again. That downward glance is the key. It reflects a moment of internal softness, a brief vulnerability where she's aware something is shifting but hasn't fully decided how to express it. It's not conscious behavior. It's automatic. This pattern creates tension. Look, hold, break, return. And in that space, something unspoken builds. Many men misread this completely. Some get nervous and break eye contact too quickly. Others become overly intense. Both reactions disrupt the natural flow. But when someone stays grounded, neither chasing nor escaping, the moment expands instead of collapsing. That quiet pause between glances is where attraction often reveals itself without a single word being said. Now we reach the most important signal of all. Sign 3, she creates private space. This is the one that most men miss entirely because it doesn't look emotional or romantic on the surface. It looks normal, even casual, but it isn't. It often begins in group settings or social environments. Suddenly, she finds ways to separate you from the crowd, not in an obvious way, but subtly. She might suggest moving somewhere else. She might lower her voice. She might invite you into a small shared moment that removes distance from everyone else around. What she's really doing is creating a contained space between you and her. Not isolation, but focus. Before emotional or deeper connection can develop, there has to be a shift away from noise and distraction. That space doesn't need to be physical separation, it just needs to feel like the rest of the world fades for a moment. And in that space, she watches your response. Do you step into it naturally, or do you hesitate? Do you overthink it, or do you stay present and grounded? Most men lose the moment here because they treat it as ordinary social interaction and don't recognize its significance. But those who understand it respond simply. No pressure, no confusion, just ease. Because when attraction reaches this stage, it's no longer about chasing, it's about recognizing what's already unfolding. And here's what most people never say clearly. When a woman creates that kind of private space with you, she's already open to something happening. She's just waiting to see how you handle it, not with words, but with presence. Final understanding, missing these signals doesn't mean you weren't enough. It means you were never shown how to read them. But once you see them clearly, everything shifts. You stop guessing. You stop hesitating. You start recognizing patterns instead of doubting yourself. And recognition changes how you move. The next time you notice a lingering touch, a downward glance, or a quiet shift into privacy, you won't question it the same way again. You'll understand what's happening in real time. That awareness builds confidence, not forced confidence, but grounded clarity. If you want to go further and understand how to respond naturally in these moments without pressure, lines, or pretending, that's exactly what is explored inside feminine intimacy, where the focus is on real behavioral understanding instead of guesswork. Before you go, take a moment to reflect. Awareness only matters when it changes behavior. And now it can. When desire is present, even something as small as a touch begins to change in a very subtle way. It doesn't disappear quickly the way casual contact does. Instead, it stays just a little longer, one extra second, sometimes two. And that small delay is not random. It's often the body reacting before conscious thought has time to step in. In behavioral science and neuroscience, this kind of response is linked to automatic emotional processing, where physical sensation becomes a way of testing comfort and connection without words. In simple terms, attraction often tries to confirm itself physically before it ever becomes verbal. That's why you might notice her touching your arm while laughing, adjusting something near you, or briefly resting her hand in a way that doesn't feel necessary to the situation. It doesn't come across as forced or dramatic. It feels natural, almost accidental on the surface. But the pattern is what matters. Most people miss this entirely because they are mentally elsewhere. Instead of staying present, they interpret, analyze, and overthink the moment as it happens. And in doing so, they disconnect from what is actually unfolding in real time. But here's the key point. When a touch lingers and there is no immediate withdrawal, it signals comfort with closeness. It indicates that distance is not being actively reinforced in that moment. And how you respond becomes just as important as the signal itself. A calm, steady, unreactive presence communicates stability. It tells her, without words, that the moment doesn't need to be forced, rushed, or corrected. From there, everything shifts into something more subtle. Now we move into the second sign, and this one often happens even before physical contact or spoken interaction fully develops. Sign two, her eyes begin to behave differently. Eye contact is one of the most discussed signals of attraction, but what is usually misunderstood is that it is not about intensity. It's about pattern and timing. When attraction begins to form, there is often a small but noticeable shift in how she looks at you and how she looks away. Her gaze may hold slightly longer than what would be considered neutral in everyday interaction. Then, instead of breaking eye contact sideways or in a distracted manner, she often looks down briefly before returning her gaze again. That downward glance is significant. It is widely studied in psychology as part of subtle nonverbal expression linked to openness and momentary vulnerability. It is not something consciously controlled, it happens automatically in response to internal emotional processing. In that brief sequence, look, hold, look down, look back, there is a kind of unspoken evaluation happening, not of judgment, but of awareness. A quiet check of how the moment feels and how it is being received. At that stage, different people respond differently. Some become overly eager and try to push the interaction forward too fast. Others become nervous and withdraw too quickly. Both reactions interrupt the natural rhythm. But when someone remains grounded, simply present, not forcing anything, not escaping anything, the interaction stabilizes. The tension doesn't break, it deepens in a controlled, natural way. And if you've ever experienced a moment where silence felt charged rather than empty, where nothing was said, yet something clearly existed between two people, that is often what is happening underneath it. Now we reach the third sign. This is the one that most people only understand in hindsight, the moment that can quietly shift everything if it is recognized in real time. Sign three, she creates privacy. This signal is often missed because it does not appear emotional or romantic on the surface. In fact, it can look completely ordinary, but its function is not ordinary at all. It often begins in social environments, groups, gatherings, situations with multiple people present. And then, without drawing attention to it, the dynamic subtly changes. She might suggest moving to get something together. She might lower her voice when speaking to you. She might take a small step closer, reducing the distance between you in a way that feels intentional but not obvious. She might redirect the interaction away from the larger group. What is happening here is the creation of a shared space within a public setting, not isolation, but separation of attention. Before deeper emotional or personal openness can occur, there is often a need for a reduced external focus, a quieter channel where interaction feels more direct and less observed. In that space, she is not just speaking or acting, she is also observing how you respond to that shift. Do you step into it comfortably or do you hesitate? Do you overthink the change in atmosphere or do you remain natural within it? Many people miss this moment because they treat it as a simple social adjustment. They stay overly cautious, overly polite, or overly aware of the environment, and in doing so, they fail to follow the subtle direction of the interaction. But when someone understands this signal, their response is not forced. There is no overreaction, no hesitation, just ease. A simple acceptance of the shift without making it bigger than it is. And in that response, something important is communicated: stability under subtle change. At that point, the interaction either expands or fades depending on how both people navigate it. And here is what is rarely said directly. When someone consistently creates these small moments of privacy with you, it usually means there is already a level of interest or curiosity present. Not fully defined, but present enough to explore. What remains uncertain is how you will handle the transition when the environment shifts from general interaction into something more focused. Final understanding: missing these signals in the past does not mean anything was wrong with you. It usually means no one ever explained what to look for in real time. But once these patterns become visible, they change how you interpret social interaction entirely. You stop guessing. You start recognizing structure inside behavior, and recognition leads to clarity. Clarity leads to better timing, and better timing changes outcomes. So the next time you notice a touch that lingers, a gaze that breaks downward before returning, or a subtle shift into a more private space, you will not be interpreting blindly. You will understand the pattern behind it as it unfolds. And that awareness changes how you move forward from that moment on. In the end, most missed opportunities don't come from lack of attraction, they come from lack of awareness. The real difference lies in noticing subtle signals instead of overthinking or ignoring them. Once you learn to recognize these quiet moments of interest, you stop guessing and start understanding what is actually unfolding in front of you.